And we are live.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and everyone that's tuning in. We are at our East Lansing Study Committee on Independent Police Oversight Commission meeting. It is March 8th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Diane, could you please go ahead and take care of roll call?
Kathy Boyle.
Kathy Boyle, attending virtually from East Lansing, Ingham County, Michigan.
Sade Colwood.
Sade Colwood, attending virtually from Douglas, Massachusetts, Worcester County.
Kelly Ellsworth Etchison.
Kelly Ellsworth Etchison, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Noel Garcia Jr.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you again. Noel Garcia, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Chuck Grigsby.
Chuck Grigsby, East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County, present.
Cedric Haro.
Cedric Haro, attending virtually from Mason, Michigan, Ingham County.
Ellen Josephson.
Ellen Josephson, virtually from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Sharon Reed Davis. Chris Root.
I'm present from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Quentin Tyler.
Quentin Tyler, present from Lexington, Kentucky.
Eric Williams.
I'm here, the Ingham County portion of East Lansing.
And Ron Bacon.
Present, attending virtually, East Lansing, Clinton County.
All right, thank you, Diane, and thank you, commissioners, staff, and council member Bacon for joining us this evening. We'll jump right into the approval of agenda March 8th, 2021. Are you entertaining any motions for that? Moved by Vice Chair Root, and then seconded by Commissioner Williams. Is there any discussion or edits or changes to the agenda tonight? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. And if you are off camera, please make sure that you do get that voice in there for the votes that we have on our motions. If you don't mind, no worries. If you are not able to have the camera on, but just make sure you tune in with the voice if you are in that situation. All right, we'll move to item 1.3, approval of the minutes 2/22/21. If there's no edits or changes, that I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison and seconded by Commissioner Colwood. Any discussion for approval of February 22nd, 2021 minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And none, so passed. Thank you, commissioners. All right, we'll move on to written communications, item 1.4. Did anyone have any comments, reactions in regards to the written communication for item 1.4? If not, we'll move on. All right, thank you. All right, so do we have anyone on the line, Justin, by chance?
One person.
All right, so pursuant to MCL 15263 subsection 1, limiting public comment to 5 minutes per individual today. Is there anyone who wants to entertain that motion to enforce that 5-minute rule per individual? Moved by Commissioner Boyle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Josephson. Is there any discussion on the 5-minute limit? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. We will be limiting public comment to 5 minutes. And you're up, Justin, for communication from the audience.
All right. Person is joining via Zoom with the name of Cody. You may address the committee. Cody, I see you unmuted, but I don't think we can hear you yet.
Oh, sorry. Hello. Hi. Hi.
Perfect.
I'm just here to observe for a class.
All right. Thanks so
from
much.
Michigan State University.
Where'd you say you were tuning in from, Cody?
Michigan State.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us and tuning in. Is that the only one we have left on the line, Justin, so far?
Yes.
We'll move to old business then. Item 3, we don't have none, and we'll go down into old business, item 4.1. We'll jump right into the work, it looks like. Recommendations, complaints, review process that we are starting at item 62 on our draft. Is that correct with everyone? Does everyone have a chance to have that in front of them, or would we like to have that put on the screen so you can also see that there for point of reference? Justin, do you have that available by chance? All right, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we left off in our discussion, and we generally were pretty productive with coming to a consensus and really having some discussion points on what we were getting to as far as our recommendation portion of everything. So we'll pick up where we left off at item 62. What I did last time was kind of read it as we went through, and I know that's a little annoying, but I just want to make sure that the audience captures what we're looking at and understands clearly. So that'll be the only reason why I do that. If anyone wants to chime in and do a little bit of reading, please let me know. I have no worries on that as well. So we'll jump into item 62, Commission Investigation of Public Mistreatment Complaint. Item A, within 10 days after the police department completes an investigation of public mistreatment complaint, it shall send the complete investigation record to the commission. Item B, the police department shall give the commission enough time to review the investigation and conduct its own investigation before the police department takes final action. C, the commission may recommend particular action, recommended additional investigation on a specific issue. Item D, if the police department does not agree to the commission's recommended additional investigation, the commission may retain its own professional investigator from the list prepared pursuant to item 9, who shall have the full force and authority of the city council to conduct an investigation on specifically defined issues. Item E, the commission may refer a summary of the investigation file, which does not contain the confidential information, to the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards for its review. And then we have points of reference. And then item D, section 4.9, East Lansing's charter describes the investigatory power of the city council. And then there's a comment there compiling summaries of those incidents. And then we just have another source of data there. So I'll go ahead and open it up to any commissioners with any response to item 62 for discussion and recommendations. Yes, Commissioner Boyle, please go ahead. You're muted.
I'm looking at subparagraph B, and I notice it says that the commission's to be given sufficient time, but it seems to me if it's going to be a workable part of the disciplinary process, there's got to be a limit on the time the commission has to get back to the police department on their recommended discipline. I know it's a volunteer commission, but we don't want 6 months elapsing between the time they finish the investigation in the police department and recommend discipline and they hear back from the commission.
Commissioner Boyle, did you have a possible suggestion on what you were thinking as far as points of reference of time?
Well, of course it's a shot in the dark because we haven't really worked with this yet, so we don't know how long it's going to take to review and convene meetings and that sort of thing. But I would suggest that if we put a 90-day limit on the commission, then that would be 6 months overall. And that would be a reasonable time, I think. Certainly they could conclude, the commission could conclude before the 90 days.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Did you want to weigh in, Commissioner Elderworth Edgerton? I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah, you did see it. Actually, Commissioner Boyle gave some additional information because I was going to say at first it was her comments were based on the police or that the commission has enough time or there's a time limit on the commission, but I wanted to make sure that the police also on the other side of that isn't only giving the commission, 30 days or 2 weeks or whatever. So I agree with Commissioner Boyle as far as there has to be some type of defined timeline that's amenable for both parties.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner Ellsworth Edgison. Does anyone have any different thoughts in regards to possible time, the 90-day time limit, and that being a workable consensus for us all to kind of think about?
So, Chair, if I could just jump in.
Yes, please, City Manager.
So it's just if there's somebody, depending on the seriousness of something, if someone is put off on suspension pending an investigation, then that time frame is quite long to leave somebody off. That's something to consider. I understand you have to have time to convene a group and so on, but maybe something 45 days or 60 days to start would be better. And the other thought is, I thought that the idea here was that the commission at this point would make a recommendation of sustained or not sustained or something of that nature, and not necessarily recommending discipline, which would be the chief's purview, but not sure if that's what was intended.
Yes, Vice Chair Root, please go ahead.
I don't think there's any mention of discipline here.
Well, just Kathy said that. I wasn't sure if she meant discipline or saying sustained or not sustained. Like, I think that was the finding that they're going to come up. What would they come up with as a part of their review? It would be a recommendation of whether something was found or not found, right?
It would be one of the findings.
Yeah.
Right? That's in the recommendations.
Yeah, I don't remember them all. I'm exonerated.
Exactly, but they're there.
Yeah.
Any more discussion in regards to item B or 62 altogether? Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I guess then I just have a clarification. To me, this is set up so that the commission can look at, in part, the commission can look at the personnel management in the Department of State Police and what they're doing when a complaint is lodged against an individual officer. So whether or not we recommend specific discipline, if we're sending findings back to the police department, is that intended to be part of the department's consideration or not? Or haven't we thought about that?
That's a good question. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Well, what I understood it to be was that's why the chief would not come up with what your recommendation is here is that the chief does not come up with a final disposition. The committee looks at it and makes a recommended disposition, and then the chief issues a final disposition and then potentially discipline from that point forward. I think there was something about if there's a conflict that it goes to the city manager for a final determination. I'm not clear from my recollection if that was the disposition of the investigation or the disciplinary outcome. So they're two separate things, right?
Was it referring to the investigative outcome?
That
not discipline.
Sustained, right?
Commissioner Williams, I saw that your microphone is off. Did you want to weigh in?
No, I was basically just listening.
Oh, okay. Yes, I saw Commissioner Boyle's hand go up, and then I saw Commissioner Ellsworth Edgison go after that.
Well, then I guess I have a question about the commission's role in this. And I don't have I guess I don't have an opinion as to this. I just have a question. Is the commission's investigation of the complaint intended just to look at whether the incident identified in the complaint, the commission, either sustains or any of the other three outcomes of that, and that's going to be the only finding by the commission, that the complaint was sustained or not proven or exonerated or whatever the fourth one is? Those are the only findings, and then the police department can't recommend discipline until the commission has made those findings? Is that the way this is envisioned?
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. I think a couple of commissioners want to respond to that. I think number one, it was Commissioner Ellsworth Edison, Commissioner Harrell, and then Commissioner Williams.
I guess my response is really like, what is the role of the Oversight Commission? So we're going through, all of these, recommendations or getting near a recommendation, but I don't want us to lose sight of what the intended purpose of having a police oversight commission to begin with. And so there's that accountability piece, right? Making sure that there's this, that there's some accountability in prior to disciplines being handed out or what have you, making sure that we're going to hear the public's opinion as well. That's going to feed into this, right? So what they think a police oversight commission will look like. Unfortunately, we're having that discussion rather later in the process than earlier in this process. But are we having this set up where, when I'm hearing some of the like sustained or not sustained or whatever, it sounds like it's very now similar to what is already in place. And so I just want to make sure that we're not headed down that path, that we're not just kind of echoing something that's already in place. So that's just my general comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Please go ahead. Commissioner Harrell, I believe, is next.
So traditionally, the aspect of sustained, exonerated, and all those various options are treated as distinct from the disciplinary decision. There are almost no oversight bodies in the United States that have disciplinary authority over the police. It's incredibly unusual. Right. There are recommendations made for discipline. So that may be something that we discuss, right, for during this particular time period. The city of Albany, just literally last month, the CPRB, the Citizens Police Review Board, essentially came back to the city and said, over the past 20 years, because we have not had this disciplinary authority, most of the time we've made a recommendation, the police department has essentially done what they were going to do anyway. And so the Common Council, the City Council of Albany, just voted to give the CPRB disciplinary authority, which is, like I said, incredibly unusual in this country. And it was immediately grieved. There was an immediate lawsuit by the police union. And if we intend to do anything other than recommend discipline, we're going to have a very, very difficult time getting that accomplished here. Regardless of the backing of whoever else might be involved, the union itself will be incredibly resistant to the idea of somebody outside of that chain of command having any impact whatsoever, right? I mean, I'm sympathetic to the idea that we don't just want to repeat what is currently in place, because if we're doing that, then there's no point to what we're doing whatsoever, right? But I envision this portion as Chief Johnson sends the report to the commission, says this is my initial finding, right? And then the commission has some period of time to essentially investigate the investigation, right? On what basis did Chief Johnson make the finding? Do we as a commission want more information? Do we want an additional investigation, right? So that's where that oversight component comes in. Right, if the commission has the authority to conduct this form of independent investigation, that is still significantly more authority than most oversight bodies in this country have. And then at the end comes back to Chief Johnson and says, this is our recommendation. It's in line with your recommendation, or we're recommending something different in terms of sustained, exonerated, and whatnot, right? That conversation about what should the discipline be that is imposed is an entirely separate conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Rawl. I believe Commissioner Williams is up next, and then Commissioner Boyle has been waiting patiently. And I thought I saw somewhere the data indicates that, I mean, in the whole nation, there's only 2% of police oversight, commissions have any disciplinary action at all. But yes, please go ahead, Commissioner Williams.
I guess I agree with Dr. Hero that the prospect of having anything stronger than recommendation authority is in the discipline stream is the prospect is low. What I'm most excited about in this is this interaction with the rule before 61E, and that allows the investigator who's doing the workup in the police department to make a finding of deficient policy, practice, or training, taking it out of that disciplinary scheme and putting it in the area of police practices and policies. And when they do that, the investigator, the person who's writing up this report, is required to produce a corrective action plan. And the critique of that corrective action plan, I'm most excited if that goes through, would give the power to the commission to make recommendations regarding what corrective action the police department should take. Again, I just anticipate losing on any disciplinary fight, but if we can get in there and find policies and practices that can be changed or should be changed, and have some authority or at least clout with respect to corrective action, that would be one of the actions or recommendations that the commission could respond with after it completes its investigation or review of this investigation report that it gets from the police department. The other thing that troubles me is in the staff comments that we have on our agenda here, where they're pointing to a paragraph in the police officer contract that seems, at least on the surface, to forbid anybody other than a supervisor from making recommendations with respect to disciplinary consequences. And that kind of throws that's a very difficult nut to crack right there. So those are my comments. I hope that one of the actions that the commission takes is an action with respect to policies and practices.
Could I just make a couple of comments?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Williams. And as far as Commissioner is concerned, I know Commissioner Boyle is up next, and I think City Manager Lohanis want to respond to Chief Johnson as well to that directly.
Who did you want to hear from first?
Go ahead, City Manager, please.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that, I would prefer to see it where the chief has an opportunity to make recommendations first, and then to the commission, and then the commission maybe can respond to them or make recommendations in addition. But it strikes me that the chief would be in the best position to be able to offer changes that he or she would like to see as the chief, to the commission. And if the commission want to see something different or something more robust or different, they could come back at that. But it seems like the chief and his function of managing the department would want to offer those recommendations first. And then the discipline part about investigations, if the investigation is done internally and then looked at or re-reviewed by an external investigator, I don't think that changes the basis of the investigation being done by a supervisor. So it's the commission has their own expert looking at it and discerning if they find concerns or issues with it, but it doesn't change the fact that that contract was adhered to. So I don't know if that is as problematic as you're saying, unless that somehow takes away that investigator, that initial investigation.
Thank you, City Manager. Did you want to weigh in on that, Chief Johnson, or did he cover that for?
He actually covered everything I was actually going to mention, but I did want to make a comment reference Commissioner Haro and Commissioner Williams. Actually, I tend to agree with both of the commissioners, their comments reference how I envision this commission to be how I would work with the commission to make changes going forward. Since I've been on board here, we have made some changes. I've been working with HRC and things like that, and we're open to look at internally stuff and look at our policies and procedures. And I can see this commission helping me make those changes going forward, as Commissioner Williams mentioned. And so I see a positive relationship from that standpoint. And the Commissioner Rowe was talking about reference to the recommendations, and I'm open to listen to recommendations because they may see something. I listen to everybody's input before I hand down discipline. So I look at this commission as being a part of that piece of the puzzle for me to help me form that decision before I make that decision. So I see a positive type of interaction between the commission and the police department. So I'm just throwing that out there, at least under my watch.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. Commissioner Boyle, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank committee member Commissioner Williams for the comments, because I think that's probably the most important part of the commission's role is to look at policies, practices, and training. And in fact, I think I would rephrase that particular heading to say, instead of deficient policy, I would say policy, practice, or training problem. And the commission could then identify where they think there is a problem in any of those areas and recommend solutions to the department. And I think that's probably the most transformative part of the commission's mission, is to make changes of that sort. Going back to the question of discipline, I'm still not clear as to how we're envisioning the commission's role in whether or not they're involved in the disciplinary process at all. If the only role of the commission is to make the determination as to whether or not the complaint was sustained, not sustained, exonerated, unfounded, illustrative of policies, practice, or training problems, no finding, criminal referred, and not to make any recommendation that there should or should not be discipline based on their findings, then I think that makes their mission a bit easier, but it also makes it all the more important that it needs to be done promptly in order to assist the chief with making decisions on the disciplinary process. So perhaps 90 days is too long.
Yeah, and I think the alternative that was presented was somewhere between 45 and 60. I think that was by the city manager. When you look at that time frame, is that something that's a little bit more appropriate that you're thinking how they can coincide together, Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, I think that would be much better.
All right, yes, Vice Chair Root, please go ahead.
A very specific point, 60 days might work a lot better than 45, because 45 might mean just one opportunity for a monthly meeting. I don't know if the Oversight Committee will meet more often than monthly, but if it did meet only monthly, saying 60 days might work better than 45. Maybe they could work faster, but that might be more realistic for a time frame.
Yeah, great point, because most likely it'll be a once a month. Unless there's something very high profile, I would imagine where they have an emergency meeting. But I would tend to agree with that, just based on kind of how we've seen and worked before on the HRC with that. And that does give us a lot of time to be able to kind of, as volunteers, go through this information, appreciate what's there, and not be bound so strictly with that time frame when it comes to that. Any more discussion and comments in regards to what we've talked to as far as yes, Commissioner Josephson, please go ahead.
This is more of what you guys were just kind of branching off on. Personally, I think they should try to meet twice a week, because if they're going to be reviewing all of these complaints, like I'm assuming we're going to, once it gets up and running, there's going to be a lot of complaints. Just like look at how long it's taken us to agree on one thing or another thing. And we meet every 2 weeks. So if there's more trivial issues, there might be more discussion, and then it might take even longer to get someone else to investigate. So I think somewhere in here, just going based on what you guys just said, I know it's not what we're looking at, should be a little bit more frequent than a month, if possible.
Did you mean to say 2 weeks? Did you mean to say what, twice a month or twice a week?
Bi-weekly, so every other week, like we do now.
Maybe
Commissioner Tyler, please go ahead.
Maybe the solution is to say meet as needed. So that can have some wiggle room in terms of meeting, to her point, every other week or for monthly.
So if I understand you, Commissioner Tyler, are you saying kind of have a standard once a month meeting and then have as needed, or just as needed, period?
But Chuck, I like both suggestions. You have something in the books, but also have something that's needed.
Understood. And that's why I wanted to clarify, because I like that. And I think that allows a little wiggle room. How many complaints a year is East Lansing Police Department really, dealing with? And, how many do we get a year? I guess I would question, be my only little thing on that. But I think that solves it, having that added language on the once a month, just from my individual standpoint. Any more comments? Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
I have one on subparagraph D about the additional investigation, if that's a timely comment right now. This is set up so that if the commission, if they want more investigation, can request the department do it. If the department does not agree to do the additional investigation, then this says the commission can retain its own professional investigator, which of course has a price tag attached to it. I would suggest that before the commission does that, they take the dispute to the city manager and see if it can be resolved at that level. And if not, then go to the independent investigator.
Any reaction or response? I kind of missed a little bit of that, and I apologize. Yes, Commissioner Williams, please go ahead.
Doesn't that set the commission in some sense above the city manager? You're saying that if the commission doesn't agree with what the city manager decides, the commission can hire an investigator to go above the city manager's head, it seems.
No, that's not what it says. If the commission doesn't agree with the police departments, the subparagraph C and D, or I guess subparagraph D, addresses where the commission wants additional investigation and requests it from the police department, and the police department doesn't do the additional investigation that the commission desires. So this paragraph says, in that circumstance, the commission can retain its own professional investigator. I'm suggesting that before that happens, the dispute go to the city manager. And the commission say, we want this additional investigation in this matter, and the department can't or won't do it. So we want to hire a professional investigator.
Of course, at that point, I could just look at it and say, well, I want you to do more investigations. And I can do it as well as an option.
Right.
So it doesn't get to the final determination. It just gets to whether you do an additional outside investigator or not, and whether there's more information that the commission wants and needs.
Exactly. And I thought that if there's a dispute about that, it might be able to be resolved that way.
Yeah.
Instead of going out and hiring a professional investigator.
Now, that means that a professional investigator will never be hired.
Why do you say that?
I can't imagine why the city manager would want to investigate himself or hire an outside investigator to investigate his own police department. That seems very hard, very difficult to imagine the circumstances under which that would happen.
Well, that depends on how you write this paragraph. If you write this paragraph so that the city manager has to approve the outside investigator, then yes, that would be what would happen if the city manager decided that we didn't need a additional investigation, and he could either say yes or no to that request of the commissioner's part. On the other hand, if you don't give that authority to the city manager, and you just say, before you go out and hire a professional investigator, first go to the city manager with the problem and see if he can resolve it, then you might be able to resolve some of these additional investigation issues without hiring a professional investigator.
There may be a third option, and that, I believe, is in the Albany ordinance, where the commission in Albany goes to the city council and gets their permission to hire an outside investigator.
That would be another way to do it.
I like that idea.
Yeah, Commissioner Rowe, did you want to go ahead and wait in that discussion? You're muted.
Yes, I think ultimately this is a question of who has authority over the oversight body, or who the oversight body is not beholden to, who they need to respond to. I think Eric's point is valid in that, to assure some level of independence, the commission should be as removed as possible from this process of chain of command, if you will, in terms of the police department, right? Because the city manager is the person who has this ultimate authority over hiring and firing and discipline and those sorts of things, right? So this idea of the commission making this request or getting this authority from the city council, it allows the oversight body to be one step outside of that disciplinary process, where at the very least the perception might be, right, if it is the city manager's job to discipline the department, right, then if the commission has to ask him for or her for permission to do this outside investigation, then potentially that's a conflict of interest.
Well,
I'm with you, Commissioner Rowe. And, ideally, that's kind of what I had envisioned, that the council would be involved in regards to being able to have that independence. Yes, City Manager Lahanas, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't see it as asking for permission. I saw it as asking us to give a chance to make certain that the department wasn't unwillingly or unknowing or for no good reason withholding information that we could be having them to have a look at again. So it's giving the city another chance to make sure we produce information that the group requests. If we don't produce it, then the commission goes out and does its own investigation. So it's sort of just giving one more chance to make sure that, of course we don't, but let's just say we had a chief who said, I disagree with you, you're asking for way too much information and it has no point. And then I get a chance to look at it and say, well, no, I understand the point and why they want it, so let's do it. So it gives another chance to free us up from a mistake, from a miscalculation that both people are the commission and the chief are miscommunicating, not agreeing on something before going to this outside process. It doesn't mean that I would have a say over what you said. It just means that I would say, yes, we can go back and produce that information. And then we go back and get it. but it doesn't stop you from going and doing your own investigation. If we say, no, you don't need it, then you go do your own investigation. So it couldn't stop your investigation. It's just saying, giving us a chance to get the information you requested.
Thank you, City Manager Hollis. I see Commissioner Boyle, were you waiting to speak?
No, I agree with, I'll speak though. I agree with George's analysis. It was a way to get the dispute resolved without hiring the outside investigator. I think it could happen in a lot of cases where it would resolve the problem and avoid the need of an outside investigator. And I look at the things in this setup for the commission that have aspects of being a blank check, where the commission is authorizing expenditures of what could be a lot of money. And I think maybe there need to be some controls before they move in that direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. So the reason why I chose on you is I saw that your microphone was off. And so I'm seeing that with Vice Chair Root. Did you want to chime in or were you just having your microphone off?
I did want to ask if it would be helpful at the end of section D to say what the investigator does at the conclusion of the investigation. Does that person give a report to the Oversight Commission? Does the person give a report to the Oversight Commission and somebody else? There maybe is an assumption there, but it's actually not stated what happens.
I have a comment if I can add something.
Yeah, just a quick second, Commissioner Reed Davis. Let's go ahead and acknowledge your attendance and where you're at for Diane, if you don't mind, before you make a comment. If you don't mind, please.
Yeah, I'm in East Lansing, Michigan.
County, thank you.
Ingham County, sorry, 48823.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was just gonna say, if it's possible, could we add something, basically saying that we can go to the city manager, but if we don't, or if the commission doesn't like what the city manager says or doesn't agree with what they said, what the city manager says, they can still have the autonomy to go to the outside investigator, just like making sure that they still have the autonomy to have that outside investigation if they feel that it is needed. And then
You're muted. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I muted. But I just said, if it's possible, could we have the in the section, like under there, saying that the commission will have the autonomy to go to an outside investigator if they don't like what the city manager proposes, or if they feel like it's not resolved after talking to the city manager, if that's what we like, if that's the decision we're going towards, so that they can still have the autonomy just to make sure that it is fair. And then I said that I also have a comment about another one, but I wanted to wait until this conversation was done.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed Davis. Any reactions or comments in regards to the suggestion? Yes, Commissioner Williams.
I think it's important to consider the practical circumstances in which this would happen, going to an outside investigator. And I've been through a few police chiefs in East Lansing, and they're all kind of like Kim Johnson. They work with you, and they will, especially they'll work with city commissions and so forth. And if you asked the police chief to do more investigation, and you had a serious case for that, they would probably do it. So I imagine that the circumstances in which you disagree about whether there should be more investigation would be rather limited. It's not like you're giving a blank check to the commission to just go out and hire, Perry Mason to work up the case again. So, I think most of the cases where you have a critique of an investigation, they would go out and look for something else. And so it's the prospect of spending a whole lot of money on a private investigator is rather distant. At the other end of that spectrum, I think once you get up to the level of the city manager, and you and the city manager have a disagreement about how this should come out, there's no point in hiring a private investigator, because no matter what the private investigator says, the city has already made up its mind. There's nobody higher than the city manager. So what can you do with this report that the investigator creates, except maybe send it to the Detroit News or something? So in terms of the practicalities of when and if you hire a private investigator, it seems to me like it should be somewhere lower in the chain of command. But you should also not be afraid that it's going to happen all that often.
Thank you, Commissioner. City Manager, do you want to respond to that?
I did, because I think that the relative importance of the commission's advisory recommendations are being missed here. So an independent committee is going to be hearing from a citizen that they felt something wasn't handled properly, for instance, and it comes to the commission. And we got to figure out what, if they all come, if it's just reviewed, whatever. And if the commission disagrees with the city, that has a very significant impact in my view. If you're going to have a situation where your chief and your city manager on somewhat a regular occasion, on an important basis, are disagreeing with this commission's findings, and that's going to have a weight to it. So I think that the independence and recommendation of this commission, if it's separate and different from what the city manager says, doesn't at all diminish its, the considerable weight that it's going to have in terms of its findings. Like we said, some cities have it where the entire process is completed, and then the commission looks at it and says, this was handled properly, or no, it wasn't. You should have done it this way. Go back and look at it again. The city manager at that point could do it or not. But having that report written that way in a public meeting, I think is very significant. So I disagree with Eric. I think this would have a lot more weight than people are thinking, and that advisory from a public group is still a very significant tool.
Thank you, City Manager Lahanas. Commissioner Boyle, did you want to jump in there?
Well, just one more thing, and that is, again, if this paragraph deals with needing additional investigation, and my assumption and understanding would be we need that because we want more information. And if our independent investigator comes back to us with more information that we didn't have before, I'm certainly not going to assume that the police chief and the city manager are going to ignore that additional information. I mean, I don't think it means that they've already made their mind up, because if there's additional information, certainly they're going to consider it. And that's why you use an independent investigator, is to get more information. So I don't view it quite the same way that Commissioner Williams views the situation.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Ellsworth-Edgison.
The only thing I would add is, and I don't know that we're going to get there tonight on this particular paragraph. We might have to just kind of work this in some committee separate, but we have to get the language right in whatever it is we're trying to accomplish with this paragraph, and remove any potential ambiguity, because just like a collective bargaining agreement, things that are agreed upon in a CBA, there's sometimes where there's that gray area. You go back to what was intended by this language, right? And so what's intended by what we're doing or what we're going to frame up could be lost on years down the road as the city manager changes or council member changes or the chief of police changes and the council, the Police Oversight Commission changes. And so making sure that whatever we massage this to be, that we get it right, because this will live for a while. And so you want to make sure that you're removing any ambiguity as to, well, this is what was intended, but all the players looking at this down the road may be different than the players are today.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so I knew this was going to be a biggie, and Vice Chair Root also warned me in regards to where we're at on 62 and how we're going to get through this, and then ultimately be at a consensus. And it kind of sounds like, we're still processing what that language is, thanks to Commissioner Ellsworth Edgison's point, and trying to understand what we want to have intended and collectively as our recommendation to the council. I don't know if you want to entertain coming back to this once we get a chance to process this, because I don't know. I'm open to suggestions, but it kind of seems like we are not going to be able to come a little close like we have before in the other ones to where we're at. And I'm looking to see if I got any suggestions or recommendations in regards to item 62. Yes, Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I think you got to keep in mind as well, in the spirit of the discussion, you're never going to have this collected. I'd rather go bigger or whatever you're going for and miss than make assumptions and go under. And you're not going to have this exact collective of this city manager, this deputy chief, this collective of people, Elaine, myself. Like, you got to prepare as if, frankly, where it has enough teeth to, if it is truly adversarial, so be it. I think that's part of it, and hope you never have to use it. It's better to have it and not need it than to not have it. So I think just some of the conversations, if you're waffling one way or the other, go to the bigger side of it. And then if it has to be taken away via council or somewhere else, I would err bigger and not smaller, and not make an assumption that you're not going to get whatever it is, because it may not fly anyway, and contracted and everything else involved. But that's just how I would err. If it's something you're going to get hung up on, just go to the higher side of it and try to muscle through that part of it.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. Any response to that? I'm really now kind of apprehensive with the intent and making sure, as opposed to whatever it is, whether it's big or middle or wherever we end up doing, that the intent, and as we change councils, as we change, leadership or what have you, that the intent is there and clear. Commissioner Williams.
I'm not as disappointed as you are about the conversation we're having. I think we've made great progress. This is good.
I'm not disappointed. Commissioner Williams, I'm not disappointed. In the language of the discussion, just assume you can have what you want. And I'm hearing limiting conversation. We'll limit it later. Like, if you're going to take a swipe at it, don't assume contract anything else. Take a swipe at it in your language or just in your thinking. I don't want you getting boxed in by what can't be done yet. That's all I'm saying. Nothing. It's a great conversation. This is hard work, but I'm just saying, I don't want the language to box you in, or you feeling limited by what can or can't be done by what's been done. And even what Commissioner Hero said, 2%. What if it's 10% next year? East Lansing always says they want to be this, that, and the other. I mean, I just kind of feel liberated and swipe at it if you want to swipe at it, and we'll determine what can happen. I don't want you guys feeling mentally. I just want to keep you free, a little bit freer. That was it.
Yeah, we're making progress.
Killing it.
You'd be happy.
I'm happy.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon and Commissioner Williams. Any more discussion specifically to where we're at in this discussion of item 62 on all parts?
Yeah, I had a comment. I would just say, like, as far as the language, I think I'm kind of getting stuck just because is the language ever going to change? Is there ever going to be a time where the commission is able to change the language that we established here? Like, what would that process look like as well? Because I want to make sure that it's specific enough so everyone knows like what they can and cannot do. And I know that does kind of sound limiting, but I kind of get stuck on that because I want to make sure I know everything I'm able to do and everything that I'm not able to do in specific like ways. And if it's left up to like interpretation, like it can be like easy for the commission to get shut down on some things, and then it can be easy for the commission to, I guess, try to reach too far. So that's kind of like where I was getting a little stuck at, I guess.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed Davis. If I understand part of what you were inquiring about, I think you were asking him, and I think you were asking about the process, and I think how we do it, we would have what we're doing here, have the recommendations there to council, and they take and choose however they want to decide on how to have this set up. And then ultimately, if there's a change in that, then that would be up to council, if I'm not mistaken, and probably recommendations from any commissions that were involved or the commission that's involved to send to council for those changes. I think that's part of what your question was referring to. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
Makes sense.
Okay, and please correct me if I'm wrong about that chain from anyone else that may be more familiar with that process.
This is going to be an ordinance, eventually, and then council could pass a new ordinance making amendments. So if something is not, you may not get it perfect the first time. If something isn't perfect and it doesn't work, the council liaison, the commission would recommend or ask council to look at an issue and then recommend a change to it so that it can be tweaked or modified. So you don't have to live with what you recommend or council passes forever. It can be changed, improved.
Okay, good. Yes, absolutely. Does that clear that up for you, Commissioner Reed Davis?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
No worries. Vice Chair Root, please go ahead.
Returning to a question you made, Chuck, a little bit ago about how to get to final language on section 62. Would it make any sense to have Eric and one other person look at it again before our next meeting and see if there are any changes to be made to bring back to the group?
Is anyone against that suggestion? Because I don't see how right now another possible avenue of doing that in a way that people can process, weigh in, and these two individuals who are hopefully Commissioner Williams and someone else is able to kind of take that information and then come forth with it in our next meeting. Is anyone opposed to that process? Commissioner Williams, are you open to possibly working on this particular section more with someone else who may volunteer to kind of really get our language a little bit tighter on the specific 62 item?
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners who would be interested in joining in that endeavor with Commissioner Williams in regards to the item 62 and the language? All right, seeing none, Commissioner Williams, I will volunteer and help in whatever capacity that I can with that and assist you. So no worries on that. And if you really are compelled about kind of really what your point is of your discussion tonight, and you really want us to really look at that, please email Diane, so then we can kind of get that weighed in on what we're doing. So by the time we come to our next meeting, we'll have a clear understanding of what that is, if that is okay with everyone on the call. No objections? Yes, Commissioner Reed Davis.
I was just gonna say, I had one other comment about the timeline. I know it said like the police would the police department will give the commission enough time to review the findings or whatever if they aren't able to do anything within 30 days. I was wondering if we could specify like what enough time is. Like how would that look? Would that be up to the police department to decide, or would that be up to the commission to decide?
I'll go ahead and offer an answer. I think it really depends on what the complaint and maybe the severity of the issues that were involved with that. Ideally, I think right now we're thinking that what we'll have in place is something that we have a body that meets once a month, and they'll have their regular scheduled meetings. And then as needed basis, we'll have them jump in there and have alternate meetings to that schedule. And so the time frame that we had talked about was based off that 60 days, because most likely, like most commissions, really meet once a month in regards to getting the work done with the time and appreciation of the people who were involved and stepped up with their participation with volunteering. And that's kind of how I see answering your question. But if anyone has a better or a different idea of that to address that question. Does that clear that up for you just a little bit, Commissioner Reed Davis?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, good. All right, so we were going ahead and move on from item 62, and we'll return to that, Diane, in our next meeting, and we will work on Commissioner Williams and myself will do what we can in between and coming back to that just for record's sake. All right, we're to 63, disagreement between police departments and commission. A, when the commission's review and investigations are complete, the commission shall submit its recommendation to the police department. B, final deposition of the complaint on behalf of the police department will be made by the police chief. And C, if the commission disagrees with the findings of the police chief, the commission may recommend that the city manager modify or reverse the police chief's action. The city manager will issue a written opinion. In the comment section there, in section 63, in East Lansing, the city manager has the power to review decisions of the police chief under section 7.3 of the East Lansing City Charter. City manager is the city's chief executive and supervisor control of all of city departments, including police departments. So that's item 63. Any recommendations, suggestions, or comments in regards to that language or intent of that language? Yes, Commissioner Boyle, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. Is this going to also cover when there is a finding or recommendation of a policy problem or training problem? Is that also going to be covered by this disagreement paragraph? I mean, it looks like it does, but I just wanted to make sure.
Well, I do a dangerous game of assuming yes. And I saw Commissioner Williams say me with a head nod as in yes as well. Any other commissioners have anything outside of that? Yes, Vice Chair Root, please go ahead.
I didn't realize that this was in reference to the policy recommendations as well. I thought that the recommendation document was didn't have specifics about how the Oversight Commission would develop and submit recommendations for policy and practice and training issues. So I'm not being very articulate about it. I just didn't realize that's what I was looking at here.
Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
Yeah, I'm not muted, right? Okay, I'm looking at the possible findings under section 61, I think it is. And finding E is policy, practice, or training problem. That can be a finding. And it says, if this finding is made, the department will produce a corrective action plan. So I'm imagining a situation where that was the finding of the investigation and the department produced a corrective action plan, and maybe the commission didn't agree with that plan and thought something different should happen. That's what I'm envisioning here when I asked the question about 63, the disagreement between the department and the commission.
I understand now.
Yeah. I mean,
Thank you.
if it encompasses that, then
Mhm. There could be other instances when the Oversight Commission would make recommendations about policy that did not come directly from an individual complaint.
this only,
Right,
yeah,
this only relates
relates-
to decisions that originated with a complaint. So
Right.
that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle, for that clarification and question, Commissioner or Vice Chair Root. Any other reaction, comments, or concerns with the intended language of the language of 63 that we have, or any questions about it? Did I see your hand, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison? Okay. All right. We'll move on to 64, which is another whopper. Mistreatment complaint case summaries. The commission may prepare a summary of the facts related to a public mistreatment complaint, the procedure the city used to investigate the complaint, and the city's final decision based on information available to the commission. Commission shall publish the summary in its annual report. And then there's a comment section. Compiling summaries of those incidents and how they are resolved may be useful in judging how well the complaint system works and in developing general policies for the future. Reactions, comments, concerns? Yes, Vice Chair Root.
I'm a little bit confused about the verb may in the first sentence and the verb shall in the last sentence. It says that the summaries will be included in an annual report, but they may or may not be made originally. Maybe Eric can explain that a little bit.
Well, if you do a summary, which you're within your discretion to do, you have to publish it.
Okay. Can you give any idea of the sort of guide points of when you would decide to do a summary, when the Oversight Commission would decide to do a summary and when it wouldn't?
No, I just gave him that flexibility. You know, there might be some complaint that they consider so insignificant that they'd rather publish something else. Not every complaint is going to be, you know, Gacito.
Sure.
Does that help you out, Vice Chair, with the language of the first and then shall? And then,
I think we might want to communicate that a little bit more clearly, but I understand the concept.
any other reactions? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 65. Modification of existing policies. A, police department policies and procedures for processing mistreatment complaints shall not conflict with the procedures prescribed in this ordinance. B, the police department shall modify its existing procedures as necessary to conform to the ordinance. Anyone have any reaction or comments to the item 65? We're good with that one? All right, we'll leave as is and we'll move on. Okay, so we have knocked out, except for a couple of parts of a section there, and we're gonna, I guess, go from the top and go from the left open parts of this section 4. Is that correct? Yes, Vice Chair Root.
I think there might be a few things that we discussed at our last meeting about the earlier part in the complaint section that we might want to make sure we have agreement on before leaving the complaints part.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. Now I have I have communication here. Did you want to go ahead and lead with what that is, or do you want me to go ahead and
Well, I can lead with one of them.
Okay.
I'm
Please.
you know, I'm hoping that these won't take a lot of time, but I think we're going to have to vote on something later, you know, and I'm wanting to make it real likely that we won't be surprised by what we're voting on, you know, that we've got a common understanding. One of the questions from the staff document asked about, I think it's the very first question, about which complaints are going to come to the Oversight Commission. And we discussed that last time. I'm not sure we came to an agreement. And one of the particular issues which is raised in that staff memo is whether complaints initiated internally to the department will come to the commission or whether it will be only public complaints. And I thought it might be good to be sure that we resolve that. My own opinion is that it would be good to get, for the commission to get both types, both the public complaints and the internal ones. One reason is that that's how it's been done for the last 5 years with one hiccup in terms of what the HRC has been given from the police department. The other is there are 2 very significant use of force complaints in the last couple of years that were not made by members of the public. And so I think, and you know, if somebody was involved in a situation where they also have are facing charges, something very significant, a lot of very significant things might have happened, but the person might not feel that it might not be in their interest to make a complaint themselves. And nevertheless, there might be a complaint made by somebody in the department. That actually happened in 2019 with a sustained use of force complaint. So that was a complaint that really did involve somebody from the public. It was a very, very important issue. I think it was good for people to know about it. So my suggestion would be that all complaints come to the Oversight Commission, and that the Oversight Commission would have the opportunity on the internally generated ones to maybe, you know, have a majority vote once they hear the report from ELPD leadership, that they don't need to do a further investigation of some of the internal ones. If they decide that that really isn't something that affects the public very much, or, you know, it's more of a workplace kind of issue, that there wouldn't need to be an extended period of time spent on it, but that would be a decision that the Oversight Commission would get to make.
So if I could just jump in, because I think we're obviously the ones who raised the question.
Right.
So you raise a good point. I had originally thought that stuff initiated by the chief should not go to the commission because it's going to frankly get in the way. If the chief sees something wrong, he wants to be able to address it from a personnel perspective. So what we'd be doing is inserting a process in between the chief and his employees and lengthening the time potentially significantly in which the chief can address things. So any other department head, if they find there's a misconduct, they can investigate it, come to me, come to HR, come with a recommendation. We can take a personnel action, transaction very quickly. So perhaps in this situation, if it is an internal complaint initiated by the chief involving a citizen, then perhaps it goes to the commission, because that gets to your issue of public accountability. But if we envision something where it's falsification of a time record, mishandling of equipment, destruction of, misuse of equipment, lost equipment, insubordinate to a supervisor, that's something that the employer should be able to handle with that employee and take the appropriate action, and maybe report on it at a quarterly basis or a regular basis and say these things happened and this is what we did. But the chief still should be able to maintain a disciplined workforce, and if he initiates something, should be able to see that transaction through. But I understand your point certainly about the fact that if we're initiating it basically because we saw something with a citizen, then that's something that the public then would have a concern about.
There are some oversight commissions that draw that line, that if it involved somebody from the public, then it comes to the oversight body. And I think that is a possibility. And I do like your idea, George, that if there are some that don't come to the Oversight Commission for review, that at least they'd be reported, on some kind of timeline.
They would all go, just the timing of it.
Yeah. Right, I get that. And discipline within the department is something that we want to work. That's part of accountability. One thing that occurred to me, however, is that it's possible that there could be a complaint about the behavior of an employee in the workplace that didn't immediately affect a member of the public. But let's say there was sexual harassment. It is possible that, 2 months later, there could be sexual harassment by that person against a member of the public. So it can be difficult to judge what things are of significance to members of the public, even if there wasn't a particular member of the public involved. That's what I've been trying to wrap my head around.
But it still would be something that chief and a personnel decision would build upon. So if there was a sexual harassment thing in the for co-employees and action was taken, and then something else happened to the public that was similar or not similar, the chief would build upon that with progressive discipline. So it really wouldn't have to change, you know what I mean? It still would be relied upon in that. And that's back to the personnel decision. Again, not whether it was found, substantiated or not, which really is the concern for the public, because that's the thing where this is a double check on the police's investigation and watching themselves. You have this independent group that's watching the investigation process, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, how about if we said then all public complaints, initiated by a member of the public come to the Oversight Commission, and any internally generated complaints that involved a member of the public. Does that make sense?
Yeah, chief's got I think that sounds like a clear delineation to me. Chief, do you have a thought on that? Anything different?
No, that's fine. It is important for a department head to be able to deal with their own employees without having to take it to a full-blown committee. I mean, I guess if anyone was a boss, they would want to deal with their employees directly. And but if it deals with the public, I have no problem with having the commission be involved in that piece of the puzzle also. But the time cards, there's issues that we come across, all the time that we want to investigate. We don't, and we're handling it, and we report out on a monthly basis. We can still report that stuff out, but instead of having to come to the commission first is a little troubling from my standpoint.
Well,
Williams, please go ahead.
I'm thinking about item 59. The police department is producing a quarterly report of all its complaints. And now suppose you give the commission, 30 days to, if they see a complaint float by in one of these quarterly reports, they can ask for more information. And if they want to, then they can seize it as one of their own and pursue it. And that would allow you to monitor the complaints as they're being reported and pick them out if you want to.
Yeah, I think the dialogue is important, like those quarterly reports, I think having that dialogue is important. And, I think that you can see what we're coming from, what happened in those particular cases and things like that without having to go to the commission beforehand.
Yeah.
Deal with internal stuff, right?
That way you're not inserting the commission into counting hours on a timesheet.
Thank you.
I think that little package works out pretty well.
Did you want to keep going, Vice Chair?
Well, one thing that's closely related to that is if the commission is going to receive all the complaints that come from a member of the public, do we still need the term mistreatment complaint, or can it just be public complaint? I think mistreatment might be kind of intimidating to some people, should I put in a complaint? Am I claiming that I was mistreated, and how do I understand that, and how are other people going to understand it? So I'm just wondering if we can do away with that word mistreatment.
Commissioner Josephson, you wanted to respond?
Weren't we in the process, correct me if I'm wrong, of discussing of changing that word regardless to things like maybe unethical behavior? Like, weren't we, I think I remember bringing that up last time.
Right.
Was just in general to broaden that scope. So I think to your point, if we did replace that word with something like unethical behavior or anything along those lines, I think that would kind of do two birds with one stone.
Well, I think we don't need to figure out the complexity of what that word should be if what we're really referring to is all public complaints, in which case we don't need another word in there.
Yes, Commissioner Boyle, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that when you have an adjective in there, it might be limiting, even if we don't intend it to be limiting. And if we just say all complaints, all public complaints, then we're going to get everything and give it the attention that the particular situation needs.
Thank you, Commissioners and Vice Chair. Is there anyone who disagrees with taking the adjective?
We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I was just commenting that thank you for your comments. And if anyone had any strong objections, taking the adjectives out and just have it be complaints, public complaints. So please go ahead, Vice Chair.
Okay. At our last meeting, we talked a lot about whether there was going to be one complaint form and one or two complaint forms, and that was related to the question of whether members of the public could make one or two types of complaints. One of them was a complaint about a particular incident, which is what we've already got going. And the other is whether an individual member of the public could make a complaint about a policy matter or a practice or training matter. We talked about it for a while. I'm not sure where that conversation ended. I remember Eric saying something about, well, maybe there could be kind of two prongs, or prong might not be the right word, but they could sort of go in two different directions. I think maybe keeping the complaint of an incident the way it is now is something people understand. And it would be good to keep that. And then maybe we could, and the recommendation already has a section about somebody from the public can get 20 people to sign a petition about a policy matter to give to the Oversight Commission, and the Oversight Commission would then be committed to holding a hearing on it. I think we might just add a second point that if an individual member of the public has something they want to raise with the commission, some complaint or concern about policy or practice or training, that there would be some written document that they could give to the Oversight Commission, and the Oversight Commission would receive and respond to in some fashion that would be specific to the way the police department is operating, not a specific incident. And I think we've learned in the last year that there probably would be occasions where people from the public would want to raise that kind of concern, and that it might be good if we just had something concrete about how to do that.
Any reactions? So just to make it simple, I'm a simple guy. So as is with a complaint, but and/or with an option for the public, correct, Vice Chair? Is that fair to kind of?
Sorry, I missed it.
So as is with the complaint, as is.
About an incident.
Add to and having an option for the public to be able to have another way of being able to have the complaint submitted.
That would be about a policy or practice or training issue, right? That would be a different type of complaint, rather than trying to smush the two together.
And I agree with that. Does anyone have any other comments or reactions to that suggestion? Yes, Commissioner Williams.
I see that as a way to kill a complaint about a policy or practice. If I send a policy or practice complaint to the commission. There's nothing that says the commission has to do anything. And if, you know, if I want to, you know, complain to the police department, say, I don't want you to use SWAT teams to serve search warrants. We're constructing this ordinance, and I could complain about, you know, an officer, you know, who cheats on his timesheet, but I can't complain about SWAT teams. If I complain about SWAT teams, it goes to this commission that isn't obligated to do anything. So we've set up this complaint processing system where the police department has to investigate a complaint and produce a report, and it's automatic. It's in the ordinance. And why can't I take advantage of that system to complain about the practices of the police department?
Well, how about this? How about if you and I try to figure out language on this before the next meeting? Because I think you're saying, for example, I think that a policy complaint should go to the department. I think you're right. You know, I think we haven't written it up. I bet we can, you know, get it right. It's just that it's a little bit different from the way it's written, so we don't have anything to exactly, you know, come to agreement on right this minute. But is that something we could come back to next time?
You know, if they want just the two of us to come up with something, I guess that's okay.
Well, we'll come back next week, just next meeting, just the way you and Chuck are coming back with section 62. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
That gives, you know, all right.
Okay. I don't think we're far apart. There was the question in the staff questions about dealing with mediation and whether introducing mediation conflicts with the disciplinary procedure. We talked about mediation last time. I'm not quite sure what we need to do. One possibility is to keep that language pretty broad and to say that this is something that the Oversight Commission, I mean, already the concept that Eric had was that the Oversight Commission will work out conditions under which mediation can work, and, you know, how to sort of put it into place. But I guess if the person who raised that question from staff wanted to say more about if they think something needs to be changed.
Yeah, I think I raised that question when I reviewed these, and one of the language in that recommendation said that if mediation is agreed upon by both parties, then the complaint stops. And I think that the concern from my point of view is if the complaint stops, does that mean from a human resources perspective that the chief of the police department cannot take any disciplinary action if, if the officer, let's just take a very simple situation, an officer swears at somebody and the chief wants to take some disciplinary action for rude and unprofessional behavior. But yet the two parties say, yeah, we'll mediate this, we'll meet, and there'll be a mediation process and the complaint stops at that point in time. Does that preclude the chief from, doing some type of progressive discipline reprimand for the individual that may have violated the policy, but yet, we're going to mediate it with the complainant? So I think mediation is a good thing to have in there. Just maybe the language actually in there has to be thought out so that it wouldn't preclude any personnel action if needed by the department or the city.
So you're thinking there's some way to keep an option of mediation, but to improve the language so it doesn't get in the way.
Yes.
Okay, how are we going to come up with the language?
Well, I think, like I said, I think that the point of if mediation is agreed upon, the complaint stops.
Right, that's a problem.
I think that word "stop" there could be a problem from an internal perspective of being able to take some type of disciplinary action.
Wouldn't we say that the mediation process would not limit the chief's ability to take disciplinary action at the conclusion of an investigation, something like that? Just say something like that at the end to give the chief the opportunity to still instill discipline.
Please chime in, Commissioner Haro, and then Commissioner Boyle.
Yeah, so last week we had been discussing changing that language to reflect a pause in the complaint process, right? And so I think that might potentially allow us to address this, right? That the complaint isn't closed, that it's sort of paused pending successful mediation. So I think, as Chuck suggests, if we add a line to that even if mediation is successful, that doesn't preclude the chief from engaging in some form of internal discipline or reprimand. I would think that would satisfy that.
Commissioner Boyle, please go ahead. Thank you, Commissioner Haro.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
He does that to me all the time. I mean, he just takes it wherever I had and just chews it up. All right. So does that help, Vice Chair, with the questions you had with the language in those follow-ups, or do you have more?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. How's everyone doing? We're good? We can keep going?
Can I add one thing that was somebody suggested to me in an email this week, which is about the section on complaints about where one can make a complaint, where we've got, we want to expand the places people can make a complaint. It was suggested that people be able to make a complaint at the city clerk's office because it's right at the door. People know where it is. It feels very public. It feels very safe to go there. It's not intimidating. And that might be a helpful addition. And I thought that was a good idea.
Was that for a particular section you're referring to?
I think it's 54 or something like that. I don't have it up right this
Okay,
minute.
54 was Commissioner Haro confirmed.
Okay, great. I think that's a pretty simple idea that's kind of consistent with the discussion last week, but that particular suggestion didn't get made at our last meeting. Since it's right at one of the doors of City Hall, and people, I think, have a lot of confidence in the city clerk, and don't have a discomfort of going there. That might be a good addition.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
think it's a good suggestion as well. The clerk's office handles papers all the time. And
Right.
It's just a natural fit as well. So, and the location is good.
Yeah.
Thank you to who sent Vice Chair Root that email. Great. All right, so that's the complaints section for today. Where are we picking up on section 4? Because I'm a little confused, and I want to make sure. Are we on page 11, or am I off on where I think we're at? Or where we're picking it up?
Aren't we going to go back to the beginning? We
Yeah.
just finished.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Page 10.
Page 10? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no
what,
problem.
okay, yeah, exactly. All right, thank you. Got a lot of paperwork in front of me here. So thanks for bearing with me. And I thought it was page 10 here. So before we get started, how are we feeling about, where we're at in our meeting tonight and how far we want to go in regards to, I know that right now we're hitting 7:30. So I just want to make sure that we all understand the commitment and where we want to get done tonight. So if anyone has any comments or thoughts about jumping in here and starting this up, I would love to hear it. If not, I'll just go ahead and jump in. Yes, Vice Chair.
Would people be willing to go till 8 o'clock on recommendations and then be pretty confident we'll be finished by 8:30 with the remaining items on the agenda?
I'd appreciate that.
So just in case I lose track, please help me out.
Okay.
And we'll do what we need to do, because once I get going, it's hard for me to slow down. All right. So we're at section 10, or not section 10, but page 10 on commissions. And number one item is definitions. Did anyone else want to do any verbal reading of the sections other than hearing me do this the whole time? All right. I guess that's what you guys pay me the big bucks for. So number one, definitions. A, commission means a police oversight commission. B, confidential information means information unknown to others that specifically described and exempted from disclosure by statute. C, investigation means search and collection of information regardless whether a mistreatment complaint is involved or contemplated. D, public mistreatment complaint means a complaint against the police department or an employee of the police department alleging mistreatment of a member or members of the public. Examples of mistreatment include excessive force, sexual abuse, racial discrimination, gender discrimination, mishandling of evidence, abusive patterns or practices, or other ways in which the department or employee may mistreat the public. Public mistreatment complaint does not include complaints that have no significant impact on the public. And then we have a comment on item B, confidentiality statutes include MCL 15395, involuntary statements by law enforcement, definition of personnel records, MCL 42.3506, limits the disclosures of personal records, and MCL 15243, voluntary limits on disclosures that a city may assert under the Freedom of Information Act. So item D, then the phrase pattern or practice is adapted from the U.S. Justice Department enforcement of civil prohibition of a pattern or practice policing that violates the Constitution or other federal laws. Pattern or practice cases may begin with investigations of allegations of systematic police misconduct, and when the allegations are substantiated in with comprehensive agreements designed to support constitutional and effective policing and restore trust between police and communities. And cited the Civil Rights Division Pattern Practice Police Reform Work, 1994 present, Civil Rights Department of U.S. Justice Department. And then under there, we have the commission should be able to address patterns and practice and not merely the behavior of individual police officers. I'll stop there at 1 because there's quite a bit of content there and get reactions in the definitions. Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
A couple of things. One is for investigation, I would revise the way it's written. I just wrote a note on mine, and here's what I did with it. Investigation means the search and collection of information related to the activities of the East Lansing Police Department. Because we're not going to be investigating other things in the city. I mean, the commission isn't. It's Police Oversight Commission. Then as to paragraph D, again, I would delete mistreatment from the phrase we're going to use and just call it a public complaint. Means a complaint against the police department or employee of the police department involving a member or members of the public. Examples include excessive force, sexual abuse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In other ways in which the department or employee may interact with the public.
Anyone who is maybe opposed to those changes or wants to discuss those changes or suggestions by Commissioner Boyle? I think we're all in with that. Commissioner Boyle, do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right. And this is when the expertise of the individuals on this commission really come through. All right, so if there's no more discussion in section 1 there, I'll move on to number 2 on that item. All right, commission members. A, the commission shall include at least 7, but no more than 15 members. B, members shall serve a 3-year staggered terms. C, the commission may designate panels or subcommittees to act for the commission with respect to particular tasks or types of task. And then there's a comment section there. The city of Houston divides its 21-member commission into working panels, each with its own chair. City of Houston Executive Orders 1 through 5, Independent Police Oversight Board, section 721, and then this website cited there. Reactions, comments, or suggestions? Yes, Commissioner Callwood and then Commissioner Boyle.
Yeah, I wonder if we would want to maybe open it up to commission members being able to serve multiple terms. One, if the minimum of 7 seats are not filled and there's a commissioner who's up for the end of their term and is willing to serve again, is that something that we would consider, or do we only want to limit it to 3 years and just not have people have the ability to be reappointed?
Is there, and I'm asking city manager, is with the way the commissions are set up and the guidelines to like terms and things like that, is there something that we need to appreciate?
Yeah, typically
Commissioner Collins' question.
Typically boards and commissions are 3-year terms and you can have 2 terms. Actually, I think some of them are 4 years, but you have 2 terms generally, and then your term limited. If someone completes a portion of a term and then does their 2 full terms, they can do more than the full 2 terms that way. But beyond that, council has been pretty strict across the board at saying beyond your 2 terms that you don't serve anymore, you go to a different board or commission. And that's the way it is for just about all of our boards and commissions.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's okay, good. So does that help Commissioner Callwood?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other reactions to section 2? Yes, Vice Chair, and then Commissioner Harrell.
Do we want to narrow down this point A about the number of people on the commission? When we make a recommendation to council, are we going to recommend a particular number, or are we going to leave it up to them?
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Commissioner Ellsworth. Did you have, because I know you had talked about the dynamics of the commission and who served and things like that. And I know you put some energy into that previously. Did you have any thoughts on that question?
No, because the energy I put in it wasn't around the number, but around the composition, making sure that, we're looking at the community as a whole. And my comment specific was, if there's someone that is a reformed felon, for instance, making sure that if they want to be considered for appointment, they've served their time, or maybe they didn't have time at all, I don't know. But they've served they may have had jail time, but not prison time. But anyways, they served their time, they're reformed. And would they be allowed to be considered, as they obviously would have had contact with the police, could bring a different perspective to possibly the conversation, the commission. So that was what my energy was around, not the number.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. And so I guess going back to Vice Chair Root's question, do we want to be in, we want to recommend? Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Maybe we could come back to the number after we've had the discussion about the composition. Because that might help us figure out how many people we need in order to have the kind of composition we want. Like 7 may not be big enough to have the diversity we want. So maybe we can come back to that one.
I don't have any issues with that at all. Yes, Councilman Bacon.
I think that, and to the other commissioner's question about the number, where it says at least 7, I think perhaps if it gets down to where it's around 7 to keep continuity, I'll take from city manager's lead here. We have the ability for that person to stay put until, so it doesn't fall below the minimum. And obviously, I think 15 is really high, but on the 7 side, to keep, because it's such a, it can be called up or something could occur during the time where we're trying to reseat or recruit. If we get to where we're going to fall below 7, could we maintain the integrity of the unit until we replace, just in case an issue came up during that time period? That's to the city manager.
So, you mean like continuing someone on an emergency basis?
Yeah, just so we don't fall below the it's kind of a bottom line level there, and we keep that just in case while we're out, where we're trying to interview or do whatever that process is to seat new people.
I mean,
if there's something.
I think that the 9 number is sort of a good middle ground because it gives you more. It gives you an extra person for quorum. It gives you 2. If you have 2 vacancies, you're still at 7, which is still a good number of decision makers, but it's not an unmanageable number. So between the 7 and 9, I do prefer the 9 just because it's what we've used across the city in a lot of our boards and commissions, and it seems to work well. But there's nothing magic to that number. You always want an odd number because it gives you an extra person to get to a quorum, and obviously decision making by having the split, but the odd vote as well.
Yeah, I think 9's better because I could see us fall into where there's 3 or 4 people sitting there, or we term out, or someone departs, and we end up with a bunch of departures and have almost a whole new commission. That'd be kind of not good if we were in the midst of some type of major investigation or a big, some type of big to do. So that'd be my concern. That number's too low.
All right, thank you. Any other thank you, Councilmember Bacon. Any other, in City Manager Lahanas, any other comments, questions, or concerns? Yes, Vice Chair.
In C, I think we may have an Open Meetings Act problem if we say that a subgroup of the commission is going to act for the commission. And I don't think that needs to be a problem. So we could maybe just say the commission may designate panels or subcommittees to work on particular tasks.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to have an OMA issue at all. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
That may not be as much of a problem as you think, because the Open Meetings Act allows for executive sessions to consider confidential information. And there's some issues around confidential information that you may want to have a smaller number of people involved in.
There also may be some things that are not confidential information that you may want a smaller group to work on.
The Open Meetings Act allows, executive sessions under certain circumstances. And so
yeah, but I'm saying there might be some subcommittees that we might want to, that the Oversight Commission might want to have that wouldn't fit within that executive session.
Yeah. Just also to quickly say, there's a couple of areas there you're touching upon that are important. One is the executive sessions are they're called closed sessions in Michigan, are very limited, and they really don't seem to usually hit on the things you want. It's about a personnel action where the person being discussed requests it. It's about status of litigation, which wouldn't really apply to this group. It's about the sale of land, and it's to consider a confidential attorney-client privilege communication, and also the status of collective bargaining, which wouldn't apply either. So there really aren't many executive session or closed session exemptions that are going to work for this group. And the subcommittee one we have to be careful of. I have an opinion from our attorney that I'm not sure if this group got yet, but is ready, that addresses the issue of the use of subcommittees and whether they can be public meetings or not public meetings, depending on their decision making and what they're going to be doing. So those are a couple of answers there, but those are significant issues.
Well,
thank you. Did you want to respond, Vice Chair?
I guess, can we see that opinion before the next meeting? So we'll be advised about whether this section needs to be changed?
Yep.
Okay. We can leave it until then.
Diane's catching all this for us and keeping us in track with all things that we're going to get back to, hopefully. All right, so we'll move to item 3, appointment of commission members. We got a great segue to that. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Harrell, go ahead.
I was just curious if we need to specify that members of the oversight body need to be residents of East Lansing, or if that's something that's covered at a broader level in terms of city ordinances, that any commissioner must be an East Lansing resident?
Yeah, it's just basically like the term issue. This covers that as well. It says they have to be residents is generally what it says. There are some exceptions to that for specific groups like the DDA and some other groups that have specific expertise, like if you're a business owner but don't live here. But generally speaking, the general ordinance on boards and commissions talks about that.
Any other comments, questions before we move on? All right, thank you. So item number 3, appointment of commission members. The city shall appoint members of the commission, and that's it. All right. Yes, Vice Chair?
There are a lot of ordinances in other cities where that section goes on for like pages, you know, and I haven't looked at our ordinances, the commission ordinances recently, to know whether issues about how you initiate staggered terms, for example, is that something we need to deal with, that, you know, you'll appoint a certain number for a certain number of years at the beginning and that kind of thing? Or are we already covered from the other ordinance?
I think that's taken care of in how you appoint the commissions, but I have to look at that and see. And we
Okay.
also consult the city attorney to see if there's a way when you start a commission that you make sure you stagger it so that you
Right.
have different terms.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to section 4 and keep it moving. Members with human behavioral backgrounds for section 4. At least 2 members of the commission shall be professional social workers or persons related to professional degrees engaged in the work of helping people in special populations, such as homeless or mentally ill people or people with substance abuse disorders. In the comment section, alternative approaches to people in crisis may be more effective than the traditional police approach. People with social work or similar backgrounds can be useful on an oversight commission designed to explore alternative approaches and policies. Reactions to section 4. Concerns? Everyone's okay with that language and intent? Okay, I will move on to number 5, conflicts of interest. So we have A, the city council shall not appoint a person to the commission if the person has in the past 2 years held a job that requires licensure by the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. B, no member while serving on the commission may hold a job that requires licensure by Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. C, no member while serving on the commission may be a city employee. And D, no member while serving the commission may be a candidate or applicant for employment in the police department. All right, I feel like I read one of those twice. Yes, Commissioner Boyle, go ahead.
I don't think we need to say, well, serving on the commission. I think we can just say no member, maybe a city employee, et cetera, because you're not a member unless you're serving on the commission.
I don't see anyone jumping up to defend that. Is there any other comments or some changes in language that you're seeing there?
Not for me.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we're good for section 5 for the discussion tonight. I'll move on. All right, number 6, demographic balance of commission membership. And it's just real brief here. The city council shall balance the commission membership to reflect the racial, ethnic, and gender makeup of the city. Anyone have any challenges to that? Yes, Commissioner Boyle and then Vice Chair Root.
Just wondering about age.
What are you wondering about including it or not
Yeah,
including it?
including age, right. I mean, we have a young community here when you look at the census data.
Good. Were you about to say something, Vice Chair?
Not on that subject.
I agree with that, because the police relations with students is a big problematic factor in East Lansing.
Good. So we have consensus on the age addition and making sure we're appreciative of that, correct? All right. I think we're ready for you, Vice Chair.
I'm embarrassed. I don't have my materials in front of me, but I have a concern that simply matching the racial and ethnic makeup of the city is not anywhere near good enough. We could have a commission of either 11 or 13 members with one African-American person on it and meet this. And I think that would be a failure. I don't think that would be good enough.
Can I just?
Yes, City Manager Lahanis and then Commissioner Josephson.
Just to speed it along, the HRC has actually good language saying that members shall be particular attention to representation from minority groups and different groups that the ordinance protects. So maybe something along those lines would help to make sure that there's strong representation from various groups.
Does that kind of address your concern, Vice Chair, in regards to the language from the HRC dynamic?
It's going in the right direction, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have to over-represent some members of the community.
Yep.
To do what this body needs.
Fantastic point, and great response by City Manager, because I think that works. Yes, Commissioner Josephson.
I just want to remind, like we were saying, it's a big, student demographic. When we're constantly like having classes graduate or new people brought in, I think it's important to remember that like it's going to fluctuate a little bit. So I think overrepresentation leaning on that side is important as opposed to matching, because it's going to be really hard to match ever-changing population.
Thank you, Commissioner Josephson. Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Isn't this where Kelly's thing should be inserted?
Commissioner Ellsworth, I just said, I believe Commissioner Williams asking you about kind of some of the things that you were talking to before. I know you've stated that. Is this where you ideally would like to have that language put in there and appreciates to your concerns or your interests?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Williams, for bringing that forward. I'm not sure that it necessarily has to be in there as a, like, one person or two people or whatever have to be reformed felons. I just want the council not to be closed-minded to, when you're seeking someone for this permanent commission, their resume could be light in some areas. I had to submit my resume. So that's where I'm cautioning. I'm not sure that it necessarily has to be like written out here that they are included, but I wanted to make sure that they are included.
Yes, Commissioner Rowe, and then Commissioner Williams, please go ahead.
Maybe what we need to do is, rather than a statement of someone from this subset must be included, we provide some verbiage that even people in these groups should not be excluded, right? So some language to the effect of a misdemeanor conviction shall not be used as exclusion criteria for membership, something along those lines.
I like
Way we
that.
can squeeze it in there without saying it in a way that, yes, Commissioner Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the same lines, like the criminal history shall not be considered a negative factor.
Thank you. Were you saying something, Commissioner Josephson? Did I interrupt you?
No, I was just saying, I agree with that. It's hard when we're not all around a table. You can't just kind of like chime in.
Yeah. It's a very difficult thing to make sure that I identify people and make sure that I don't. So yes, anyone else have any comments regards to that in relation to what our discussion is on item number 3? or excuse me, 6. All right, so so just so I make sure that I appreciate Commissioner Ellsworth Edison's. So we're going to have some type of language that kind of says you shall not be excluded. And what is that language, or what, where are we, how are we going to say that, just so I can understand what we want to finish off with on that? Can someone help me out?
I think we can work on that from the minutes.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on then for the sake of time for
It's 8 o'clock.
Oh, is it 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Came so fast.
I think it's a good place to stop, actually.
All right. I won't argue with you. So we are at 7, and we're going to stop there, Diane, in regards to section 4 for the sake of the rest of the agenda. So we'll pick up going forward in our next meeting. All right, so that leaves us to section 4.2, section 3 draft update by Commissioner Rowe. And he kind of slapped this on after we had everything kind of on here and his good work. And I really appreciate that. And I think, I guess my question is, did everyone get a chance to thoroughly go through this in a way that they could speak on it and make the recommendations, suggestions, or changes, and appreciate that out. And I wanted, before I do that, ask Commissioner Rowe what his intent is about kind of what he wants us to do with this tonight, maybe just to be respectful.
So my intent was just to provide those updates where I had given some examples of each of the types of model, and then to sort of provide a summary at the end. I am more than open to continued revision based on comments from the rest of the commissioners. So I know I got this in a little late, so if people want to take a little more time to read through it more thoroughly, I don't think it's something that necessarily needs to be voted on tonight.
Thank you, and that's exactly what I wanted to appreciate there, Commissioner Rowe. So I think based on what his response was, I think what we'll do is give the whole entire commission a chance to digest this. And then in between, if you have some compelling suggestions, recommendations, we can send those directly to Diane. Well, if it's one-on-one, you can send them directly to Commissioner Rowe. But if you have something that you want to get out to everyone to review and understand, send to Diane, and then she will resubmit that out to all the commissioners, depending on kind of your level of engagement to the document. Is there any questions about that or concerns about that process? Okay, that's what we'll do with that, if that's okay with you, Commissioner Rowe, and okay with you, Diane, as far as us being able to have that process. All right, so we'll move on to item 4.3, community input planning meeting, March 29th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And then we have listed the draft questions for community meeting there as the link. And I'll open the floor up to any of the commissioners in regards to where we're at in that meeting right now. When I pull that document up. Yes, Commissioner Joseph.
I just have a quick question. I don't remember specifically. Are we gonna have some sort of like presentation or explanation of the actual scope of this commission before the questions? Because number 1 says understanding the boundaries of an oversight commission. Are we putting together something before we put them into different rooms? How is that gonna work?
Great question, because in our subcommittee thing that we were doing with Commissioner Ellsworth Edison and Vice Chair, we were kind of getting into that conversation about how to lay everything out. And obviously we are open to what the body wants to do and how they want to go about that. But I think there was 2 different points of seeing this. One was kind of really just laying it all out so people really appreciated what they're getting involved with. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the other one was a little bit more pertaining to let's just do a short, brief intro and then jump into the subject matter and then have more dialogue onto that at the end of that. So And if I misinterpret that to the other commissioners or the vice chair, let me know, but that's kind of what I thought in relation to that. Please go ahead, Vice Chair.
Well, I think you're representing that exactly right. That's where we were when we hit minute 40 on a Zoom meeting and then we were disconnected. Since then, we've moved the session, a month later than we expected. And at our last meeting, the suggestion was made that we might be able to have kind of a bullet points of what we're recommending about an oversight commission, which is a concept that we weren't even discussing when we expected this session to happen earlier. I guess I think it might be helpful to get the view of the group now that we know it's going to be the last Friday, the 5th Friday of March, the 29th. Do you think it would be helpful to introduce that session by explaining a bit about what we're recommending about an oversight commission, and then have at least a chunk of the questions in the breakout sessions be responding to those ideas?
Commissioner Josephson, I saw you nodding your head. Did you want to comment on your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think if we have like one person, either chair or vice chair, just maybe like a very brief, like 5 minutes, maybe, because just not to say to expect the worst, but to expect the longest. We don't want to make long introductions because then people might leave the meeting because it's too late. They might have kids to put away, like to bed. And so I think like that small, brief introduction would kind of get everyone in the right mindset.
Thank you, Commissioner Josephson. Did you want to comment, Commissioner Ellsworth-Etchison?
No, I mean, that was exactly what we had talked about in our subcommittee meeting, was that we would have just a very brief overview of what the commission work will be. And then we would outline some housekeeping rules as to how the breakout sessions would work, that we would assign questions. So we wanted to walk through the questions, make sure this body is good with the questions, or if there's other questions that they would like to have interjected instead of, that then we could have people from this group be kind of the facilitator, if you will, of each breakout room. And they can go through the questions. So we're asking each breakout room the same questions that they can respond to or react to, and then maybe have a space where they can just kind of provide additional information that maybe we didn't ask, that may come about from the meeting, and then bring everybody back together into one big group, so that we can just kind of wrap up what that session, what the session was, and what we're going to then do with the information that we gathered from the community conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Did you want to respond, Commissioner Josephson?
Yeah, I also just forgot to say, so on the questions, this might be an unpopular opinion. For question number 2, trying to uncover if there's any negative economic impact due to reputation risk. And then it goes into like discussing specific interactions that citizens have had with police, just for the sake of time for that meeting. And I'm just not sure that the scope of those questions directly relate to how we're going to create a commission if we already know that our goal is to, end police corruption, enforce community policing standards. I'm just wondering that those specific details, like what that exactly is going to do in terms of changing how we're already going to run the overall arching theme of the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Josephson. Did anyone want to respond to her question or concern with the question?
No,
Yes,
for me in particular, I'm good with bringing forward, some different questions. I think it is important though to understand the community's perception. We're through the 6 months or however long we've been working on this. Maybe it's been 2 weeks and it feels like 6 months. I don't know, but we're making a lot of assumptions, right? Based on our own personal experience, looking at data and so forth. But I think it also is important to understand the communities, what the community, what their viewpoint might be, as well as, and we can certainly shape some questions, because I hear what you're saying and want to be respectful of that we could also shape some questions around the structure of the Oversight Commission. But I do think it's also important that we're not approaching this with the community as if we've already got this thing done, and that we're not considering any conversation that they may bring to the table. So, but yeah, we're not married to all of these questions. Certainly that's why we put it forward last meeting to say, hey, review these. If there's something else that may work better, let's talk about it. Let's consider it. But we just wanted to have some kind of starting place or jumping off point for these questions. But that's kind of where we are. So yeah, we're certainly willing to take something off the table, bring something else forward.
I would second that. And we need what you want, so we can make it happen. And we're getting short of time. So your suggestion, Commissioner Joseph or anyone else, we would love to know. If you don't have it right here on the spot, we definitely need it sooner than later in regards to consider that for you and appreciate what you wanted us to get in this community input meeting. If I may, can I just back up a little bit with the participation of the commissioners and the roles that we have, because I think that kind of flew over our heads, because not that I need to get commitments, but I want to understand that the commitment that we're doing for this commission input meeting is appreciated, because we will need participation from you all in regards to facilitating these breakout rooms, and really have that be something that's on the forefront of the understanding of what we need to get out of this to make this an effective meeting, and a functional one for the community, because this will be the first time that we'll open ourselves up to it. And I really want to make sure that commissioners who are able, I know a couple of them have said they have some other things going on, which we totally respect and understands, but if you don't, we definitely need your commitment to participate however you're comfortable in doing that in order for this to be successful. So I just want to back up and make sure that was appreciated. Please go ahead, Commissioner Josephson.
I guess I know you said we don't need to do it on the spot, but I have a busy week, so in case I forget, I personally would just say for the questions, they should be as directly related to an oversight commission as possible, so it doesn't turn into one day that ELPD did this, and it doesn't. I just want to make sure that people understand the scope and focus of the meeting is to create the commission and not necessarily start complaining yet about specific things they have to bring up against the department. Because the way I see it is, if that question mark says if you had a approach with the police and how did it go? To me, if I hear someone say, oh, this traffic stop, in my opinion, was unethical because of this, this, and this, our report that we've already kind of come to talks about how we're going to address that. I feel like if we asked, how do you think we can address unethical traffic stops in an oversight commission, it might make it a little bit more specific to the commission, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, Commissioner Josephson. And I think, we have a responsibility to have those questions be very direct for that scenario, worst case scenario. Not that that stuff isn't important, but for our focus of the night. And then also, I think when you talk about the intro from probably Vice Chair or Commissioner Ellsworth Edson, when they set this thing off, that we lay that all out, and they understand, the public understands, what the specific focus is going to be on that. I hope Vice Chair heard that, and Commissioner Ellsworth Edson heard that little subliminal there as well with the intro part. But yeah, I think that's important, and I appreciate those. Yes, Commissioner Bacon.
Yeah, what's kind of sticking in my craw is composition a little bit. I mean, we've all been around here for a really long time, and we know what happens to composition over time. I think we'll see a really diverse coalition to start, and then it will kind of retreat to, its lowest common denominator. I'm just considering kind of what Kelly's talking about, and I don't want to put anything back on you, Kelly, but given some more consideration to the type of demographic, or maybe some examples and maybe even some input from Elaine, I think we have to be intentional on what this commission looks like and how we keep it looking a certain way, where it's going to just kind of collapse to people who have free time. And that it's too important to be one of those commissions that has that look and feel. It has to be kept even certain talent sets on here, having people with legal backgrounds, and that's what's making you guys be so effective. So my concern is that we don't have the right mix of either intellect, skill, and racial, ethnic, gender diversity. I'm just I just can't consider how we're going to get there organically. I don't think that's realistic. So just in the back of your mind, Kelly, if that was your area of expertise, and if Elaine would be willing to give input, and that not necessarily in this form, but I'm just a little concerned about it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Please, Commissioner Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, Chuck, I just want to reiterate the importance of process as we talk about this community meeting, gathering. We want to make sure, folks have multiple, reiterate the point of multiple ways to voice their concerns or their opinions or perspectives. As we know, those from minoritized communities we lack trust with certain individuals. So, maybe those who are facilitating the conversation or discussions, start off with specific language or explicit in their language saying, hey, this is a confidential opportunity, or if you want it to be confidential, you can inbox me or chat me, or a designated person that can do that. I think it's very important to do that, and we make sure that message is explicit as we deliver, the facilitation process.
Thank you, Commissioner Tyler. Well said. And I think if I'm hoping things go the way I think in my mind, Vice Chair Root and Commissioner Ellsworth will be maybe the main figures with that, and maybe I could be that person who is that contact or that confidential information in a way that you're suggesting. I'm sorry, go ahead, please, Elaine Hardy, please.
I was actually going to talk a little bit about format and actually volunteer Dr. Tyler to talk with Commissioner Ellsworth and with the Vice Chair with regard to kind of facilitating these discussions. He's a nationally renowned facilitator, and particularly in the area of DEI, and has a broad range of expertise with bringing the community together for fact finding like this. And so I'm volunteering him. I don't know if he's available, but I think that we should really lean on and lean into his expertise in this area, because he has a wealth of knowledge about how to be able to make these types of conversations meaningful and get to the stuff that you need and want from it. So.
Thank you. I'm going to give Commissioner Tyler a chance to respond to that, and hopefully it's good news.
Yeah, I'll check the calendar on that, and I'll get back. But I'm open and willing. And if I have to move some things around, I'll do that as well.
Okay, so I'm taking that as a commitment, and we definitely appreciate that. And I think Mrs. Hardy has hit that right on the nose, and I think that with your involvement and your lead on that, we can knock this thing out the park and be very, very effective. Especially work with Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison and Vice Chair Root on that. So I'm definitely appreciative of you moving things around your schedule, and we will be looking to kind of get that all organized with you involved, if that's okay. Nice one, Ms. Hardy. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, please go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that we were waiting until after tonight's meeting to send out the press release. We just wanted to make sure there weren't going to be any final changes that came out of this meeting that would impact the press release. So that will probably be going out tomorrow or Wednesday to start getting community interest up. So we're going to also do, the City of East Lansing will be doing a Facebook event. So please be sure, if you have a social media, if you have a Facebook page, that you can go through and invite people to attend that conversation. So look for those types of things to come out this week.
Thank you. Did you have something you were going to add, Vice Chair? I thought I saw you.
Well, Chuck, you said you weren't going to push people to make commitments for the 29th. Maybe I could push people to make commitments for the 29th.
I was going to circle back, but I was just trying to figure out when a good time was, because.
Well, no time like the present. I mean, we need 5 facilitators, I think, and we will need 5 minute takers. We may not, we may have to recruit some minute takers from outside our group, but since we're moving into breakout sessions, there will not be video of all of the sessions where the actual conversation occurs. So we really need to commit ourselves to capturing that. So it would be fabulous if everybody who thinks they can come on the 29th could volunteer to either be a facilitator of a group or a minute taker in the group, because we need both of those in every breakout group.
All right, thank you. So Commissioner Josephson, Commissioner Garcia Jr., and then Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, please go ahead.
I was going to say I can commit to being a facilitator on the 29th for sure.
I would volunteer as well, but if it's a note taker, minute, whatever, however I can help, I'd like to be there.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, please go ahead.
I volunteer to be a facilitator.
That's 3 facilitators so far.
I volunteer as well.
Excellent.
Well, I mean, Commissioner Tyler, you may be doing more than just facilitating, so I just want you to be prepared. We may need you for a bigger role than that in regards to how we lay this thing out. We're talking introduction and all this type of things. So, because I'm going to take a step back for sure, and I was going to do that already, just because I think it's important that people who have the skill sets and expertise to do this thing do it right. But I just wanted to prepare you for that, and I appreciate you. I do. Commissioner Callwood, please go ahead.
Volunteering for either facilitating or minute taking, whatever's needed.
So is that 4 facilitators so far, Vice Chair? 5.
Helen,
Okay.
Noel, Kelly, Quentin, Callwood. I'll volunteer to do minutes of one of the groups.
We have any other commissioners that who are attending? I see Commissioner Haro. I think he wants to do minutes as well.
Or whatever's needed.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? So that's 2 so far for minutes, or 3.
So we need 3 more people to take minutes, but I think they don't have to be commission members. If they're people we really, trust to do good minutes, we can recruit.
I can do minutes for one of them.
Okay, you're darn good at it. Thank you.
All right. So how are our numbers now, Vice Chair?
We need 2 more minute takers. Somehow.
Okay. If we don't have, you guys get to deal with me. I can certainly do whatever I can in whatever capacity that needs to be filled there. So you can count me in for whatever needs to be done. And I think we'll be okay. I think what we have is the facilitator. I think it was the biggest thing we need to kind of understand. And I think we're good for that. Anything else that you wanted to kind of get done with this conversation, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison or Vice Chair?
I have a question, and I really don't know what the answer is, but bringing it to the group, I think might be the thing to do. In light of Helen's comments about we're really trying to focus on hearing from people about what they think the Oversight Commission should be about and how it should do it to do it right. I'm wondering whether it makes sense for Chief Johnson and Deputy Chief Gonzalez not to be in any of the breakout groups, because there would be such a temptation for people to address themselves to you and to expect you to give an answer. and that might not be what we're trying to do here. I do not in I'm not trying to silence you. That is not my goal, but I'm trying to really ask the question about what is the most effective way to do what we're trying to do at this particular event.
If you give me permission to miss that meeting, I'm good with that.
I was going to say you could include me in there too.
Well, that's actually probably a good idea. I mean, it might be that we could. I don't know how we want to do the beginning. If we want to say, we've had staff support from X and Y, but I think we don't want, particular individuals who are in the breakout sessions to have a huge impact on what happens there that's going in a direction that's different than what we say we are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, staff overall can have a much lower profile and just be there to support the running of the meeting, and sort of stay out of the panel stuff as well. And that's perfectly fine. Okay. It's the will of the commission. We're here to support the commission's work and answer questions. And if that's a meeting where you don't need that, then we're happy to not attend, won't be offended, what have you.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Josephson, and then I believe Commissioner Garcia Jr. was up next.
In terms of just the community policing type vibe that we're trying to give off to the community, personally, I think it's important for them to at least be present for part of the meeting, maybe the introduction, just so they know that they are invested in this as, part of the community. But I agree, them being in breakout rooms, I think would kind of distract.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I support what Helen said. I think to show their support, their partnership here, community policing in mind, being there at the beginning, introductions, and then staying until the end, but not be part of those breakout groups is going to send a big message, which is the message of partnership, right, with the community and the police.
Thank you, commissioners. Anyone else? Did we capture what we wanted to get done? Commissioner Ellsworth Edison and Vice Chair Root, and where we're at with setting this thing up. Are we going to meet again? Is that necessary to kind of hammer out some more things, or where are we at with that, our little group thing?
Yes, we need to certainly meet again and bring Commissioner Tyler into the fold, into those meetings. I got his attention. He's like, what? But yeah, I definitely think that we need to tighten up some things prior to. So we may need one, maybe even 2 meetings.
Okay, and Vice Chair Root or myself will reach out to you two, and we'll get that, give you some times, and hopefully we can find your schedule to set that up, if that's okay. All right. So any more, I'm sorry, Commissioner Garcia Jr., please go ahead.
Yeah, and so in these groups, are you going to need the facilitators to join in these meetings, or are you going to report back to the facilitators on how to proceed in their groups?
I think we can report back to you at the next meeting. I think that'll be fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are you okay with that? You okay with that, Commissioner Garcia Jr.? Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Josephson, please go ahead.
Last comment, I promise. When and how are we going to start advertising this? Because just if you want student involvement, it is kind of like midterm season. So I think the sooner we get it out there, the more people can plan for it.
So Commissioner Ellsworth, so you said Wednesday, didn't you?
Yeah, so we've got the press release is ready, it's approved. It was just waiting to see what the outcome of this meeting would be. So probably most likely will even go out tomorrow. On that, there will be a Facebook post created, or event created that can be shared, and where you can invite people to it through that. So that probably will also go out. I'm thinking maybe Wednesday. I'll get with Michael from East Lansing on the Facebook posts on that. But I do know the press release is ready to go. It's approved and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. So Diane, can you send the press release to the members of the commission too, so that we can, maybe circulate it by email or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are we good with item 4.3 as of now? All right, so we'll move to item 5, commissioner announcements. Do any of you commissioners have any announcements or concerns or questions about anything we have going on right now? All right, seeing none, did you have your hand up, Commissioner Boyle? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll move on to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion for us to adjourn for the evening. A move by Commissioner Josephson and seconded by Vice Chair Root. And I just want to say thank you, commissioners, for the extra time tonight and us getting through this material that we got through tonight. And we appreciate you staying extra and being flexible with that. We got some good work done and we got some great momentum with what we are doing overall with the time frame that we have in front of us. So I appreciate everyone also who has stepped up for this community input meeting and their participation with that. I also want to say thank you to staff and their time and their expertise and input that we had tonight as well. That does not go without notice, and we really appreciate that cooperation and support. And I just feel really excited about everyone who's involved. I've learned so much from each and every one of you, and I just think it's an amazing process that we've been doing, even though it's been longer than 2 weeks, as Commissioner Ellsworth just said earlier. So all those in favor, please say aye for adjournment. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care.
Good night. Thank you.